Hi, today we're going to talk about duet acting. So, intermediate students, one of your goals this year is to have a partner and create a duet acting script with them. So, you're going to take notes today over this PowerPoint, and you'll have to take your notes as you go through the video. You can stop the video and take your notes as you go. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what is duet acting and the definition. It's a memorized scene between two people that tells a story to the audience. And you can kind of see from these pictures that, they're pretty intense scenes. Some of them are reacting, having their dialogue. Duet acting can be a great thing between you and another person to tell our story. So let's go into our structure components. On your notes, you're going to have a little timeline here, and underneath it, you're going to put each of the components. So our maximum time limit for duet or duo in high school is what we do in high school, is 10 minutes. So we're going to divide this 10 minutes into this clock here, and you notice there's 10 sections. And so we'll divide them up according to the structural components of what a story is. So our first component is called a teaser. Our teaser sort of previews the topic and the mood of the selection. A lot of times students will use the first 30 seconds to a minute 30 of the script in order to tease us. And it gives us just a little bit about what the script's going to be about. And that is what we call our teaser. For a shorter script, might only be 30 seconds. For longer scripts, like 10 minutes, you can go up to a minute 30 on that. Our next component is actually our introduction that you will have written for your your duet acting script. This can be anywhere from a minute, 30 seconds to a minute and a half long. And this is where you and your partner will sort of say who you are, the title of the script, basically your theme about your duet acting, before you go into the next structural component. All right, so we're already at kind of 3 minutes here. Now what we start is what we call the exposition. The exposition gets into who the characters are and the setting. This is usually established within that first 30 seconds of the script. So if you've done your teaser, that might be the first page, and then you got to where does this exposition kind of really start about who these characters are and where we're at? You have to kind of find that in the script. Next is what we call our inciting incident. This is where does the main conflict occur? You and your partner have to figure that out when you're looking at a scene and decide, oh, this is the inciting incident. So everything before the inciting incident is considered exposition or part of that teaser. So you find that in your script. We usually make students mark it very well so you know when the incident occurs. Then we have a huge section called our rising action. After that inciting incident, our rising action occurs, and we have all these complications with the conflict. Now, this can last anywhere up to 3.5 minutes of time as far as time's concerned within the script. And it just keeps building and building and building. We might change tactics. We might change ways of getting things. And so that's kind of that rising action that continues on. And that can go, between 4 minutes and 7:30, depending on how long your script is. Next is our climax. A climax is your emotional peak of the performance. Again, it's very similar to that inciting incident. It is that moment of intenseness, no matter if it's a comedy or a tragedy or a dramatic, you're going to have that peak of that performance. Usually happens within 30 seconds to a minute. We also have we make students mark this on their script so they know exactly where that climax is at. This is sort of our tipping point of our dramatic structure that we have. And so when people are doing it, it's going to happen for each character. Where is that climax occurring? Now we have what's called our falling action. It's falling down into the resolution of the main conflict. Can happen. It usually takes about a minute or so, 30 seconds to a minute for that falling action to occur. It's sort of where decisions are being made. Either objectives are getting met or they're not going to get met before you have your ending. Our ending is called our denouement. The denouement, or resolution, you may have heard this before, is where all these loose ends of this entire story is going to get tied up. Basically, it's whether the characters are going to get their objective or not. And some do, some don't. Really depends on what the story is about. But this is the final ending of our story. So again, it is called the denouement. So here you have your structure. On your note sheet, you're going to click on the structure and it's going to bring you into a Google Draw. And you're going to be adding in what those are. And so here is kind of where you have your characters, your rising action, your climax, your following action, and your problem solved. So in your note page, you're going to be just adding your particular word. So we have exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and denouement. And so I love this kind of funny character story where this guy has a phone and something happens and this funny dragon character comes out. And then our climax is kind of interesting because he turns into a superhero and he defeats him. And then the dragon goes back in, and our denouement is that our character has won. So now let's talk about characterization. There's 4 elements that you as an actor need to take on to make a good character. Our first one is making strong character choices. You have to make choices in your character. You cannot just be like, oh, I think I'm going to do this. You want to actually decide on these things and put them into practice during rehearsal. So the 3 distinct things you must have is physicality. Physically, what does your character do? What do they walk like? How are they moving? Do they have any nervous habits or nuances? Those are your physical elements. Next is distinct vocalization. You shouldn't really be sounding like yourself. You need to have some kind of vocalization that's going to represent the character and all that the character portrays. And finally is the emotional state of the character. Where are they emotionally in the beginning, in the climax, towards the end? They should be jumping around according to whatever is happening in the script. So these are these character choices that you must make as an actor. Next is motivation. And these 2 questions you have to constantly be asking yourself throughout your analysis. What does the character want? You and your partner have to sit down and do the analysis together. It's very important that you do that. You've got to decide, what do each of these characters want? And then why does the character do what they do in order to get what they want? So it's like, are they saying things? Are they physically doing things? Are they emotionally manipulating aspects of their circumstances? This is all part of the motivation of the character. And you've got to ask these questions throughout your process of putting the scene together. Now we get into blocking. There's 4 elements of blocking when you're doing a duet acting piece. You've got to really ask yourself, how is the character moving within the imagined space that you created for them? So let's say that the scene is in a restaurant. Are they moving too much? Probably not. They're probably coming in, sitting down, having the conversation across from the table. So the movement is going to be more stagnant because it's sitting down. If you have a scene where it might be in a grocery store, that's going to be completely different because you've got different avenues that you can go to as far as your blocking that will help your scene move forward. Now, I need you to remember, blocking is always determined by the motivation of the character. If the character is moving forward, trying to achieve their goal, that blocking needs to represent that. We're not just moving in space for any sort of reason, but we have actual reasons why we move to locations. Our third reason that you've got to have good blocking is you've got to get the audience to imagine that the characters are actually in the space. So if they're in the grocery store, you've got to make it look like you're in the grocery store. If you're in a living room or outside, in a park, you've got to do the pantomime, the elements of where you are within your blocking to help create that imaginary space. Now, finally, with blocking, this is really important. As you're going through your scene and blocking it out with your partner, you've got to look at the emotional states that the characters go through. Look at the inciting incident. That should be relational tension, should begin there. As you move up the rising action, your blocking is going to be determined by what's happening. The climax then becomes super important. Look at these pictures here. You've got these two people, one accusing the other. Then in the middle, they're not even talking. And then at the end, they've resolved their differences. So that's kind of takes you through kind of that arc of that dramatic structure that we've all talked about. Your blocking needs to represent what's happening in your script. Now, the last part. How did the characters change? How do they change from the beginning of the scene to the end of the scene? So we look at how a character changes through a couple things. One, did the character achieve their goal or not? That's the first thing. Whatever that goal is, did they achieve it? Yes or no? And you've also got to look at the arc of the character. An arc is sort of from beginning to end. They sort of change as they change their emotional state. Your job as an actor is to figure out the arc and act that to the best of your abilities. That's what acting is. And so we make you do duet acting so that you both can work on the arc of a character from the beginning of the moments of speaking to the end of the moments, to the very end of the scene. So that's one of the things you have to figure out as an actor going through your script. So take your notes today and make sure that you submit them in your assignment.